Oh boy, I got some people trying to hold me back, I swear. Seems like every time I try to start a broadcast, my phone's internet just randomly goes out despite having full bar service. But, once again, it only happens when I'm about to do a broadcast. So, telltale signs there. But I'm finally in. Finally here. I've got a topic today. Also, for whatever reasons, things don't want to work completely right. But screw it. I'm going to go with it anyway because I got something I want to talk about. And I was thinking about this earlier. And I made a little abbreviation or whatever you want to call it, C.A.S.H, C-A-S-H, just to help with remembering it. But let's get into it before things get worse, before my connection goes out.
Put some respect on my name. You understand me? When y'all saying my name, put some respect on
it. Okay, so cash. So I was thinking, and I was like, I've done a broadcast talking about the trick bag that they throw the ladies with. But to be honest, the system we live in, capitalism, shout out to capitalism, shout out to white supremacy, shout out to all of that, because I keep hearing all these arguments. Some people think, oh, there's no racism, which go figure, given our history, go figure, there's no racism. There's no racism. But, well, like I said, it's whatever. Oh, there's no racism. People don't care about the color of your skin, blah, 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 blah. It's class. And then you got other people like, now mind you, other successful people as well. Actually, probably verified successful people talking about, oh, yes, it's class and race. And then you got some people where it's like, oh, it's just race and class don't matter. We all together. It's all, no. It's actually in the middle. It's both. And here's why. There's this dynamic that people talk about. And to be honest, I am interested in going over some of these stats. I got to dig into it myself, because people always look at the stats when it comes to income, which is about the general population, or at least the samples that they do have or that they can take and verify, right? That being income, the general income for black men, in the 40,000s, the general income for white men in the 50,000s. Then people just assume that, oh, that means white people are doing so much better, et cetera, et cetera. To some extent, they are, because of white supremacy, because of the system, the way the system works. It is not a true capitalistic society, not as we think it is. It is mixed and molded by what we know as white supremacy, because white people want to stay on top. That's why, and this is something that people won't, especially the people that talk about it ain't about the color of your skin, Asian people doing this and doing that. Yet the people that literally, that that just click white on their thing, which of course, Jews, the Jewish people that actually own damn near everything, they actually are like they have an operation, and the way that they're able to function, they're their own group. And mind you, their religion doesn't make them not white. No, they're white because they don't. But when I'm talking about the Jews of the society with the wealth, a lot of them, own all this stuff. They don't recognize the blacks, Ethiopian Jews, and all of them, right? They don't recognize them. I could be a black Jewish person, and they wouldn't recognize me into their, as a Jewish into their society. It doesn't work that way. No, they acknowledge that they benefit from being white, which is what they click on their little thing. They don't click Jew on the, when you go do a census or something. No, they click white, and then they benefit from all of it. It's actually very interesting how they benefit from both sides of society, white supremacy and minority group, because they're Jews. They went through the Holocaust, all that stuff. So yeah, it's actually interesting. They're able to benefit from both sides of the thing. Plus, they have that dynamic where they do keep it all in the family, all that kind of thing, which is why they do what they do. Same with the Asian people; they also keep it in the family. But here's the thing: it is both. Because you have the so-called white elite. Now, the top 1%, it heavily skews the numbers. The vast majority of the wealth in America, I think it's like 40% of it, is held by literally the top 1%. And who is that top 1%? By far, 96% of them. The number might have actually went up. I'm not sure, but last I checked a couple months ago, 96% of the top 1% are white, straight up white. Yes, that is very heavily disproportionate, but it's that way for a reason. Because the way the system was made was, the sooner you start off in the system, you get that much of a leg up on everybody else, because money makes more money. Additionally, there's some lies that are being told. Of course, the people that want to talk about, oh, racism doesn't exist and race doesn't play. No, capitalism doesn't work the way that some of these people tell you it works. It doesn't work where the best product is always the better product. It performs better. No, anybody in business will tell you that marketing is very key, capital is very key, and to be honest, a lot of branding. BMWs are shit cars, yet look at how people see them and view them because of the damn brand. Now, I remember, I can't think of the name of the book, but I was reading that book. It'll probably come to me. And it was a guy who was a CEO. And here's why this all makes sense. Because while he was in the book, people want to talk about how well Asian people are doing. Yeah, 40% of Google, 40% of Microsoft, whatever you want to call it. Yes, they're Asian. Cool. That's very disproportionate because Asians are a minority in the country, right? But a large number of them work for these companies. And then they try to use that to boost the numbers or the performance of Asian people, not completely disregarding that when you have such a small group of Asian people here in America that strategically look for those jobs, and mind you, that keyword being job, meaning they work for other people, they have generally higher incomes, yes. However, they're completely disregarding who those people are working for, meaning where are the Asian Googles? If they're so much better when it comes to education, which technically Nigerians perform better than them, but if they're so much better with education and these jobs, where's the Asian Google? Where's the Asian Microsoft? Where's the Asian Apple company? All companies owned and run by white people. Well, that's because, like I said, we live in a system of white supremacy. Yes, they make up 40% of the workforce for these companies, but they don't make up any of the ownership of it. That's the point. Similar to how slavery enriched the slave owners, they're enriching the white establishment, meaning the people at the top are benefiting from the labor of the others. Remember how I said capitalism works? You leverage the labor of others. That's exactly what's going on here. Now, here's where all this comes together. Here's where cash plays into this, because I did make this thing because I have to understand how this whole system works. And this is just something that I've that kind of just made sense. And I was like, I might want to touch on this. So here's where this cash thing works into place. So we live in a system of capitalism. Yes, racism plays a thing in it. So does your social economic status. I'm going to touch on that. But what does cash stand for? To abbreviate, the C simply stands for conflict. Now, why is all this important? Now, what I'm about to tell you is how the system works as it does and why it is structured as it is. So C stands for conflict. A stands for amusement. The S stands for status. Sorry, forgive me if some things don't work right now. Like I said, got people trying to hold me back. And the H stands for hope. All right. So what is all this? How does all this play together? All right. So I want to make a system, and this is the ingenuity of it. I want to make a system that benefits me and my offspring. However, I have to be able to make a system where I'll learn from everything that came before me, but it ensures that my lineage will survive and thrive through perpetuity, like for the rest of time, pretty much. So here's the thing. If you look back in history, one of the things with the monarchy and how systems used to work. You had the clergy. Uh, the soldiers would be right up under the monarchy because you had to have people enforce stuff. But all of those systems inevitably came to an end because they couldn't properly subjugate the people into complete slavehood. A lot of them people in Europe, England, especially France, because you talk about the revolutions and stuff like that. They people at the top, the elite. Now, mind you, this is where the socioeconomic part comes into it. The elite people, the people with the wealth that hold the power, the educated, they also tried to put a monopoly on information, which is why they try to warp history. And they if you look at American colleges and colleges around the world, there are regular colleges, there's community colleges, and then those colleges at the top, where if you so much as mention the name of them, or if you went to those colleges, you're in a whole nother subgroup in and of itself. Those being the elite colleges, or the like the Harvards and the Yales, those colleges. You know what I'm talking about, the Ivy League colleges. There's a reason why certain people tend to gravitate to those colleges, and why the overwhelming majority of them are, of course, white. But, and of course, the ones that run them and profit from them as well. Now, here's why this all comes together. Because back then, you had the kings, the queens, you had all the people below them. All the wealth was so heavily on top. However, they couldn't maintain it, and eventually what happened was revolution. The people at the bottom, they weren't properly managed. They were like, hey, I'm tired of being broke. They uprise. And actually, a vast majority of those kings and queens got their heads chopped off. It was like a never ending cycle. There'd be an uprising. Then all of a sudden there'd be a dissipation. They would, in quotations, create a new system. And then all of a sudden, somehow you end up where the people at the top again get the wealth. And then there's another revolution because mind you, there's limited resources. So the people at the top want to try to keep the resources for themselves, and then the people at the bottom, eventually, which outnumber the people at the top, there's an uprising. Now, here's where the system today is. They understood, okay, we need a way of managing these uprisings. We need a way of thwarting them. We want to stay as the elite, and we want to stay there without having to, worry about getting our heads chopped off. This is where C.A.S.H comes into play with it. The first part of C.A.S.H, conflict. Now, I talked about Calhoun's utopia experiment, and this is one of the reasons. Of course, there's limited resources, but one of the things they were talking about is psychologically, like when you're living in a utopia, you kind of need a bit of that conflict because you're not overcoming anything, and life becomes boring, and then issues arise, and then eventually it actually led to the extinction of the group. Well, there's ups and downs to populations, but there is that general trend where there's a peak at the population and then everything kind of goes downhill from there. So they've found a way to kind of make this conflict. That's why there's wars. Wars are very profitable, especially for the elite. Because imagine if I'm an elite, me and my offspring, yeah, they might be in the military, but they're going to be the higher brass that doesn't have to be out there on the battlefield like yours will have to be. Are you following me? Additionally, who do you think is supplying all the supplies to the war? Who do you think war has made billionaires? Also, it fuels that, it kind of keeps that utopia from really happening. Therefore, kind of avoiding that conflict we see with the Calhoun experiment, at least for the elite. Mind you, this is for the elite. They're eventually robotics are going to take over, and much like you see on WALL-E, once you reach that level, you no longer need the underlings to do the jobs for you because now you have the robots. So the conflict, it helps keep things at bay. Now, all of these things actually tie into one another, and it helps prevent uprisings. Additionally, you have amusement. Now, the reason why I have the cathedral there was because if you look back in history, one of the reasons why they had those amusements and the theaters and all that stuff, and he was entertaining the general population, because as he entertained the population, Caesar, it kept them at bay. It kept them from understanding or recognizing how dreadful some of their lives were, and it kept them from uprising. There was also a lot of other tactics that kept people at bay. Additionally, if you're being amused, look how many people watch TV. If you're not watching TV, you're not learning anything. So in a way, it also keeps you ignorant. So you're watching TV, you're being amused instead of bettering yourself or becoming better and actually learning. Because once you start learning more, you'll start to understand how the system really works. And then you'll understand, hey, I'm in a bad position here. And then that's how people start to try to take out the people at the top or take their places or replace them. Uprising. Now, it also works together with status. Now, apparently, one of the things with status is like, it's like, it's one of those things where people actually value, especially women, they value status a lot, sometimes more than money. You know, how many people, they go around, I got a PhD, I got a PhD. It's a very common trope amongst black women. Well, that PhD in what? I usually ask them what's their PhD in. A lot of them are in social, all these arts. Like, oh, I got a sociology PhD. I got a communications PhD, which is virtually useless. But they have that thing where they think it gives them a status that improves their life when in fact it really doesn't. It just makes them feel better. This helps because now this, along with the next one, it helps people live in that ignorance as if they're doing better than most people. Because here's one thing you have to acknowledge: when people, even if you're at the bottom, you remember how earlier I would talk about how, and this also plays in how the poor white people, because mind you, there's more poor white people than there are in America than there are black people, period. But it keeps them at bay because the poor white people won't uprise against the white elite, because they always looking around at the black people like, oh, we're better than you. At least I'm not black. That's how those people think. That's how the immigrants come over here, even though they're being exploited. That's literally the whole reason they're coming over here. They're being exploited. They're getting paid pennies on the dollar, putting, people, Americans here out of work because, mind you, they're trying to bring all those jobs that they sent overseas for cheap labor. They're pretty much just trying to bring those jobs right back and then bring in the cheap immigrant labor. And then once something happens here, they're just going to outsource them again. But they're trying to exploit them, and they don't care about being exploited because, one, they think they're in a better socioeconomic status or class here when they got that job and they're working for, whatever. They think that they're going to get better, which plays into the next one. But at the same time, they look at black people and they're like, oh, well, at least I'm not black. And this status thing also plays into the hope thing, because coupled with the status, what do people always talk about when they come to America? The American dream. Oh, anybody can become a billionaire if you work hard enough, if you do this, if you do that. It's whatever everybody always says. This is powerful. Also, you have religion coupled in there, but this is extremely powerful because now there's the defense to the elite. Oh, well, I'm elite through lineage and through wealth of my family. Yeah. But what's preventing you from doing the same? This is where that whole dynamic of pick yourself up pull you up by the bootstraps. That dynamic when they talk about black people, even though history shows while black people were building and doing better for themselves, they were actually outperforming white people. That's one thing they don't want to tell you, because mind you, when white people had slave labor was what made America rich. When they freed those slaves in an agrarian society, meaning you had to farm and everything, the white slave owners didn't know how to fucking farm because they had outsourced that to the slaves. So I don't know how to farm because I've had you all my life farm for me. Therefore, once you become free in this fake, this is why I said that even though it's a capitalistic society, it's fake. In this fake capitalistic society, I now have to compete against someone who has literally their entire life has been farming. Because you're free now, meaning now you're my competition. That's why they had to do the crop sharing and they had to do the whole reinvent slavery, pretty much, because those white slave owners knew that they could not compete against those slaves because they knew how to do the damn jobs better than they did because they were doing the damn jobs the entire time. You see, that's how they had to trap them with bullshit contracts and stuff like that, because they needed those black laborers, because they realized, oh shit, we don't know how to do any of this shit. We've had slaves for so long. We can't really compete in the system. Okay, we got to rig the system. And this is where the rigging comes into play. Because it was through that wealth that was accumulated from the slave labor from all those generations. It was through understanding the unfair advantage of the slaves because of all the knowledge that they did. Because mind you, those slaves, they learned from the prior slaves how to properly farm and do all those techniques and stuff. So they had gobs of information. That's why I said the white slave owners couldn't compete. If there was an actual fair market, they would not be able to compete. Which is why when some of those black slaves went on and invented some of their own black Wall Streets, was black. There were a plethora of those establishments just all over the country. Of course, the majority of them were burned down, flooded. You know, they would strategically make sure that they could go and take whatever was being built by black people by force, because they understood, oh hell, if these people start getting shit going, we can't compete with them. Which, if you reading the Malcolm X's autobiography, when he was talking about how you have a bunch of, on the black sides of town, back in like the 1940s or whatever, he said he would talk about how the white people would come to their establishments all the time because they had the better stuff. They knew how to make better food, better music, etc., etc. Of course, things are a lot different today. Now, with the American dream and the hope, now they look down at the people that are at the bottom with this rigged system, and they're like, oh, hey, I got rich and everything. You can too, if you work hard enough. Even though they know the system's rigged. But at the same time, because all these people are telling themselves that same lie, also religion. I think it's Hinduism, where if you're a poor farmer, you believe in the afterlife, meaning or rebirth, meaning if you live your life as the best poor farmer you can be, you'll be reborn as something better in the afterlife. That whole concept, it kept people where they were willingly. It kept people struggling, working for other people, because remember, these people work for those companies that own the capital that was built off the slave labor, because they had to. The system's rigged to where you didn't have the hundreds of thousands at the time, now millions and billions of dollars to start an Apple or a Google, or to be the venture capitalist that invested in those companies. You didn't have that. So the money, the capital was very important. All of these play into one another. You got people playing on status and hope. Like I said, the immigrants coming over here, at least I'm not black, and I got the hope of the American dream. There's lots of amusement, music, propaganda on TV nonstop, pushing false narratives, making people ignorant, because the more you're watching TV, the less you're actually doing or learning. And then there's constant conflict. There's the tribalism that we see going on. Divide and conquer is actually the concept, right? All this fuels the system as we know it today to make sure that the elite stay at the top while everybody else at the bottom are in a constant struggle to try to make it to the top. Keyword being try, because remember, they're still holding on to that American dream, that hope that they can make it. It is possible. And that's the danger of it, because it is possible. And that's what keeps fueling the hope. The problem is, it's just one hell of a rigged system. It's one hell of a rigged system that's been put in place for a reason. And although it is possible, which is the dangerous part, although it is possible, you have to be able to navigate it and manipulate entire groups of millions of people. Because once you have enough money, once you're Elon Musk or something like that, you got enough money, you're able to influence an entire population, pretty much. Look at how Amazon was looking for an HQ, and look at how all these cities were literally giving them money and incentives. Hey, come here. Because all that power that he got. And what funded both those companies? That very same capital uh, venture money, like I said, that came from wealthy people. That most likely, if it's based out of here in America, came from slave labor from way back in the day. So then you're pretty much like politics. Then you're pretty much able to put whoever in place that you want. That's why politics, a lot of it's run off of funding, money, who can get the donations. And all the while, the people that are fighting over politics, all these little fake conflicts, you got the LGBTQ. Remember when Obama was in presidency? You had Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin happen. It was supposed to be on reform for policing. And what happened? You had LGBTQ, you had black women. It was all of this continued conflict, so nothing eventually got done. And that's how it's meant to work. So remember, and just to help you remember this, to remember how the system's structured, how things have been put into place. Yes, there is the elitism, there is the socioeconomic class level, and then there's also race. Pretty much anything you can use. And now today we have LGBTQ, we have male, female. Everything can be used to pretty much just break people apart because it's divide and conquer. All of this is used so that the elite stay where they are, and everybody else just keeps operating the way that they are. And I find this interesting. So, hope you take that to heart. And I hope it helps you kind of think differently about how the world works. And thank God my connection did not go out. But thanks for watching. And until next time, folks.
お前はもう死んでいる。